Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signore, and today is day one of Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard happening in Fairfax, Virginia. We have a lot of questions. I want to break it down. So happy to have Christopher Melcher, attorney at law, back here to go through this case. So good to see you again, Christopher. How you doing?
Well, great, Andy, and thanks for having me on the show. And it's cool to see the start of this trial and all the coverage you're going to be doing every day afterwards. I know it's a huge job, so thanks for letting me be part of it.
Oh, yeah. No, I know you haven't followed as much, so you're not going to be the expert I go to all the time, but you are my legal expert a lot, so hopefully we'll get you in occasionally to offer your insight. And I wanted to get you in today because, well, two reasons. I want to talk about what today is. There's no cameras in the court today because it's jury deliberation. I want to talk about what that means, what they're going to be doing, you think, behind the scenes. What are they looking for? But also, something else came out today. We saw Amber Heard conveniently have some really good press right before trial. I see this as jury swaying. We're going to break this down along with Amber's statement that she put out on Instagram right before the trial as well, which I want to read with you. But before we get to that, I just want to tease that. Obviously, this is the big case. It's on Court TV. I see Court TV's coverage. For the Johnny fans out there, I'm with you. I'm already frustrated hearing sort of not just the bias of them not really doing any homework on a lot of the backstory, but also just them trying to label it as, oh, they're just both toxic and whatever, and not even wanting to be there, it seems to report. So I promise we will get you a lot of experts who are informed and want to be here to really talk about this. And honestly, Christopher, I'm trying to get Amber fans to come on to hear that side of things because I don't want to be biased here. I want to make sure we're being fair. From all the evidence that I've done in my homework, I'm Team Johnny Depp. I haven't seen Amber bring any real piece of evidence to prove that what happened, and instead I've seen it the opposite. So before we get all there, I know I want to keep you more legally on the outside of this. Let's talk about the jury deliberation because that's happening today. We have both parties have arrived at the courthouse. Here's Amber arriving, and I'll play that over. But what are both parties looking for today? Could that take longer? Is that something that's usually pretty easy to burn through in a day? What are your expectations for this trial day?
Sure. So
sorry, go ahead.
Today's jury selection, and the judge has given 1 day to select a jury. And under the Virginia Code, they only need 7 jurors for a civil trial. So it's not 12 jurors as it is in California, 7 jurors. And so what'll happen is they have this jury pool, like you all have gotten these jury summons in the mail if you're in the U.S., and they're brought into court. They'll be given questionnaires, as we've seen in other cases. Have you heard about this case? What do you know about this case? What do you know about the parties? Do you have any firmly held beliefs that would prevent you from fairly serving on the jury? Have you been a victim of domestic violence? Have you had your name defamed? Ask general questions like that. That'll weed out a bunch of people. And then the ones that are left, the judge is only given 1 day. And so the attorneys really have to act very quickly and basically, in a wholly biased and unscientific way, look at somebody and say, do I think they're going to be fair to my client? And it's kind of a ridiculous process. And so the judge may do some questioning. Sometimes the judge will let the lawyers do a few questions. And then what happens is, say they have 20 people in the room of potential jurors. Johnny's side maybe get to go first and strike one. It's called a peremptory challenge. Okay, so you'll say, okay, thank and excuse juror number 13. Then Amber's side say, okay, thank and excuse juror number 5. And you just keep going in sequence until you wind up with 7 people left in the room.
Now,
and that's your jury.
That seems like that would take a long time, right? Because how do you get all those questions? How are they going to go through these people on sort of the slow speed of a court day? Is it typical to go through in a day, or could we be in trouble and they don't get it done today, you think?
This judge says he's doing it today. And so what they'll have done is this, potentially last week or probably this morning, hand out these questionnaires, answer all the questions. If somebody says, yeah, I've been a victim of domestic violence, that'll out. Prompt, them put into one category, ask them a few questions. Hey, could you put that aside? So by the end of, this morning, so a couple hours of time, they'll go through the questionnaires, they'll weed out the people who can't fairly serve on the jury. And then they have the afternoon just to go through couple questions, and then it's like Johnny's side, you strike somebody, Amber's side, you strike somebody until we have 7 left. Yes, it can happen. And a lot of states, like in California, we would take a couple more days, but it's no more scientific than just guessing at, okay, I'm looking at this person. Do you think that they're going to be good for Johnny, or is this person going to be good for Amber? Some people would speculate, and they have jury consultants. There's no question. Both sides have jury consultants who have thought about demographics. Is a female juror better for Johnny than Amber? The jury consultants would probably say, yeah. What about the age of the person? Because if they're younger, they've grown up and seeing these folks as stars. So there's an age demographic where maybe if you're a little bit older, you know Johnny, but you're too old to know Amber.
Right.
So there's probably a sweet spot there. They're probably saying a 45-year-old female is a good juror for Johnny, then they'll have the perfect one for Amber.
Because Johnny and Amber are obviously there watching come in on the loop here, but like they don't need to be there, right? They're not doing it. Why are they there? And do you think they can get involved in this? Do the lawyers do they say, hey, that jury, that one doesn't look, I don't want that juror there. What do Johnny and Amber do today?
They're there to be there, because if they're not there, then the jury's like, well, I'm here. I'm supposed to be at work, supposed to be with my family, and this guy or this girl doesn't even show up. So they have to be there. And certainly if one's there and not the other, it's done for.
Right.
Because the jury's supposed to, instructed to rule based on the evidence according to the law. But we know that doesn't always happen. And there's a lot of you look at somebody and you size them up and you're like, I like that person, or no, I really don't like that person.
Right. People definitely do that. I want to make it clear because tonight, just for everyone, if you're watching this and you're unclear, we'll be live tonight at 5 p.m. with more analysis. In fact, we have some psychologists joining us, experts in this case, who will be breaking down Amber, more generally, like the credibility of Amber Heard and why so many of us are on Team Depp. I really want to talk about that. Some of Depp's faults, Amber's faults. We're going to break all that down tonight. I hope you join us, guys. But speaking of that, Amber made a statement. Now, clearly there's a lot going on. They're going through their things, but this to me, similar to when we saw Travis Scott putting out his charity effort and things prior to his, thing happening out there in Austin after Astroworld. It's hard for me to not see this, Christopher, and think, well, there's clearly a motive here and potentially jury swaying. Here was a statement Amber Heard put out on Instagram. I'm going to go offline for the next several weeks. As you may know, I'll be in Virginia, where I face my ex-husband Johnny Depp in court. Johnny is suing me for an op-ed I wrote in the Washington Post in which I recounted my experience of violence and domestic DV. I never named him. Rather, I wrote about the price women pay for speaking out against men in power. I continue to pay that price, but hopefully when this case concludes, I can move on, and so can Johnny. I have always maintained a love for Johnny, and it brings me great pain to have to live out the details of our past life together in front of the world. At this time, I recognize the ongoing support I've been fortunate to receive throughout these years, and in these coming weeks, I'll be leaning on it more than ever. With love, always, Amber. Add to that also press release, which I'm sorry, I don't believe this was put into People magazine unless Amber's team wanted this put in People magazine. And here is her celebrating daughter Una's first birthday, literally the day before trial, which a lot of us have speculated, was this baby made surrogate, timed, whatever, to ensure that there was a baby ready to put on display during this trial. I don't mean to be mean, but that's how dark I feel like Amber's been, and some of the things we've learned about her through her perjury in Australia, through her promising to give sick children money that she didn't, through her actually lying about her actual DV charge that Amber has had, where her girlfriend lied about the officer being a homophobe, which in fact wasn't. She was a proud lesbian who was just like, what? Amber has been stuck in so many lies and credibility issues throughout the time. It's hard to not see her as more manipulative, many called narcissist. We're going to talk about that deeper tonight with the psychologists and the examples. But Christopher, since I have you legally, could this be jury swaying? Do you think this helps her case to put this out here? When you see this stuff, what is your reaction?
Well, this message that she did on Instagram looks like it's written by a lawyer, not by a party. And she's really weighing in on or lying on the First Amendment issue, saying that she was basically exercising her First Amendment right to comment on issues of domestic violence, and that's going to be, or is, a defense that she now has under Virginia law. There are rules against pretrial publicity that a party or attorney are not supposed to make statements before a trial that could prejudice the proceedings. this could be a little bit close there because she's directly talking about the case right before it's happening. And what occurs in these trials is that the judge will instruct the jury not to look at social media, not to look at news, and not to do its own independent research and only to rely on the evidence that is presented during the trial. But we know human nature. Like if some juror is waking up today and going into the Virginia court thinking they're going to be on some awful trial and winds up on this trial, I really doubt that they're not going to immediately start doing internet research on this.
Correct.
And they're going to start finding stories. And so both sides will engage in this type of conduct.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because in Virginia, I imagine there's a lot of people who are all going to be like, what other case? I got jury summons today. What could it be? Oh my God, is it that Johnny Depp case that's all over the news? It's kind of impossible, I would imagine, how they're going to find somebody who's going to be able to be like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I mean, I guess it's possible, right? There's a lot of people in this world, especially ones who will show up and do their civic duty, maybe don't watch TMZ, right? Does that worry you, that the scale of how big this is and Johnny Depp being a bigger star, that could be harder for them to have someone who's unbiased?
Well, that's it. I mean, we really want the jury just to listen to these parties testify and the other evidence that's brought in and make a decision on that evidence and not on things that aren't in evidence, which is Twitter and Instagram and news stories, commentary, stuff like that. And that's our system of justice, is that make a decision based on the evidence that the court believes is appropriate for the jury to hear. But again, human nature, unless we sequester this jury and automatically put them in a room, take away their cell phones, and not allow them to even look at the internet or newspapers for 5 weeks, which ain't happening, they're going to do their own research and they're going to start looking at stuff. And then we have a jury who's potentially making a decision based on something that they read on social media rather than in court. And that would be a reason for Amber's posts and the People magazine thing to try to humanize her, try and make her look like a good mom, that who would make this up if she has this young child. So
I mean,
she's pushing that.
This is brilliant too, because it has nothing to do with the case. In theory, if it's, I'm speculating, I don't know, but all this press that she's getting today about celebrating daughter's first birthday is a great way to humanize her before a jury, just in case, which doesn't fall in the problem that you said, correct?
Yeah, it is smart because it's a nice human interest type piece that has nothing directly to do with the case. So if a jury's doing their unauthorized research of Amber, this would come up, and they might say, "Oh, this seems like
single
such a
mom.
nice lady."
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So dangerous. Look, as we have so much to go through, and we'll be breaking it down tonight. So make sure you guys join us. You're not going to want to miss this one, I promise. And we're going to be here every day at 5 p.m. going through this case with a fine-tooth comb, listening, playing clips, and bringing in experts. But I just am curious in general, and your thoughts on this, Christopher. Do you think this was a smart case for Johnny to put in there? Obviously, the UK case didn't go his way. I got a lot of deep feelings on that. I don't feel like it was a fair trial at all. They seemed to just ignore evidence. However, it was a harder fight to win, given that it was about the news magazine, not really about did he do it. But overall, what are your thoughts on this case in general? What are Johnny's odds, and do you think this is helping either of them going through this process?
Well, this is not helping him. That's clear. And because it's bringing attention to something that he doesn't want attention really being brought to. And this is the thing that faces every celebrity or high-profile public figure when they're defamed. And the first reaction a lot of times when I've counseled a lot of clients on this is like, I want to go and sue and I want to, clear my name. And so we immediately come back and saying, well, okay, but you're now bringing attention to the very thing that you are hurt by. And now it's going to be tested out in a big public court proceeding. And that's what's happened to Johnny when he's sued in England. That's the best place to sue because they don't have the First Amendment or free speech rights there that we do in the U.S. So he probably thought he's going to win that case and clear his name. But then look at how it turned out. So, he brought that on himself. I mean, he's the one who filed that lawsuit. And then he filed in Virginia, which was, a more favorable place to sue for something like this than California. That the thing would have probably or possibly been thrown out of court before he even got to a jury because of California's anti-SLAPP law. So again, he brought this on. Now he may win, and then he does have a piece of paper that says like, "Hey, I was defamed," and that would be incredibly powerful for him. But if he loses this one, look at all the attention that he's brought to now have two courts have a negative finding here. So it's a very difficult spot to be in. I'm not saying he did the right or wrong thing, but it is a calculation that he definitely would have had to go through and would have been advised on by his lawyers, is saying, do you really want to open this up?
Yeah, I think that's well said. That's a completely fair point, and I'm sure he thought, look, I always have the idea of, if you are innocent, you scream it from the rooftops, right? When you're not innocent, you don't really want to do that. You don't want to go out there and put yourself up to the scrutiny. That is in my experience as someone who literally lied in his life, got caught lying in his life, and then had to come forward and, and declare his innocence. You got to own what you did, and then, call out what you didn't do and talk about it anywhere. So I always saw the fact that he was been so vocal as a sign of innocence in a way, because why would you have put yourself up to this much scrutiny, like you just said, if you knew there were some skeletons in the closet or recordings or things that were going to prove that you did it? You know what I mean? So I hear you, and I that's where I'm at. My response to that sometimes, and why I've been so adamant on this, when I hear those tapes from Amber, man, it just really, really rubs me the wrong way and makes me really sad. And I could see him wanting to just get revenge for, like, how dare you accuse me of this and everything that you've done in this relationship. Sure, I wasn't perfect, but I wasn't that. So we'll see. I think this trial, do you expect this trial to end on that technicality, as you brought up? We talked about this with Andrea Burkhart about the SLAPP law now becoming an issue. Do you think that technicality, in a way, really will be the end of this? Will we end on a technicality, or do you think the jury will listen and finally give us a verdict of what did they do it? Who really is guilty here?
Yeah, I would expect that the case will go through to conclusion and have a deliberation on whether these acts of abuse occurred, because that's all tied up with her First Amendment claim that, is she giving a matter of opinion about domestic violence, which would be protected speech, or is she defaming Johnny by putting him in a false light based on allegations that aren't true? And that's not protected speech. So to get into the First Amendment issue, the jury's going to need to know so much about the background. And by the time it has that background, I don't see that this having any off-ramp before a full-on deliberation on the issue. So if that occurs, then there will be a finding by a jury in the United States after listening to both parties under our rules of evidence, whether these allegations occurred or not, such that her talking about them in that op-ed piece was protected speech or was defamatory.
And if he loses this one, oof. It's not, that's why I want to cover this, to really get to the truth of it. So, because I've been so vocal on it, but you agree, if he loses this is not going to help his career.
Yeah, I don't know that it's going to change anybody's view if they're a Johnny fan. The Johnny fans will say, hey, okay, he got a raw deal. He didn't get a right jury.
Sure.
Whatever. There was manipulation. So I don't know that it changes anybody's view if you're a Johnny fan.
But to the regular person, John Q. public, they're going to probably take these guilties as, well, it must be true then.
Yeah, and they may not care. There's obviously the people who are invested in the story can't comprehend that there's a whole population of people here that don't care. And
I hope that's true.
And it's just, so I think that there's the folks that do care are going to be on his side no matter how this turns out, because there's firmly held beliefs. And so to your point, maybe he doesn't have anything to lose. Maybe he should just be doing this however it turns out.
Yeah, well said, because it's exactly, they already probably think he's guilty from the first one, so what's the second one to go? I love that positive way of thinking, because You never know how these court systems are going to go, sadly. Jussie Smollett's free already. My God. It's going to be very frustrating, your line of work, Christopher. So I applaud you for you being able to truck through it and do what you do. If you guys like Christopher and his take, make sure you go support him over on YouTube at CCMESQ on YouTube. Always a pleasure to have you. I hope we can get you back on some of these recaps. If you're available, we'll get you in anytime you want.
Thanks, Andy.
Always a pleasure to talk to Christopher. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the bell. We got so much for you. And you can also just click right here on the left. I'll put Johnny's trial day 1 recap right there. We got so much to break down, experts to talk to. You're not going to want to miss it. Thanks for watching, everybody.